gave it some thought, and then answered. Well, first, I have to assume I can't wish for more wishes. And if that's the case, it's hard. But here goes. I would wish for peace. Not just an end of war, but for there to be no violence between people, that no one would hurt another. That kind of peace. Second, I'd wish for financial security. I know that sometime in the future, my parents will get older and I'll need to take care of them. And I don't expect this to be easy, but I ask for this to be possible, that my family have that kind of security. Third, and here he paused, I wish that people would find a little more meaning in their lives, to find meaning so that they know that they have enough in life, that their lives have meaning here in front of them. Those were Andrew's 3 wishes. He was 16 at the time, by the way. An end to violence, the ability to care for and meet the needs of his loved ones, and for everyone to discover a little more meaning in their lives. Aren't these all things we spiritually yearn for? Can I get an amen? That is the magic of working with our children and youth. They are so willing to dive deep and show themselves to be grounded and generous, interesting people, willing to serve the world. And if you are lucky, which is another way to say if you volunteer, you'll get to learn from them the way I've learned from them. In fact, and this is really true, I hope you love worship here. I love seeing you here. But the truth is, if you want to hear some interesting ideas, if you want to be challenged in how you live, if you want to learn more about Unitarian Universalism, you'll probably meet those 3 goals better by volunteering than being in this room. I see Victoria nodding. The rest of you are skeptical, so there's only one way to find out. Just give it some thought. Just give it some thought. But I didn't share Andrew's 3 wishes simply as a means to recruit you. They're worth consideration in their own right. In fact, I really consider it, and what they really deserve is a whole sermon series, 1 sermon on each of his ideas. So I'm going to have to give that to you at some point, I know. But his eloquence prompted me to ask, what would my 3 wishes be? Or rather, spiritually, what do I yearn for? Because Andrew's wishes reveal just that, a spiritual yearning, a persistent, intense desire, a longing for something just out of reach to become real. That is yearning. That's yearning. If we are to be alive, and I mean truly alive, then if we want to make use of our one wild and precious life, then we need to be attuned to the yearnings of our spirit. So what were the yearnings of my spirit? I asked myself, could I come up with anything better than Andrew? And it was hard. I really kept returning to his answers. I kept diving into them, knowing that he really was onto something. And I realized that Andrew and I shared similar yearnings, even if we articulate them a little differently. Andrew yearns for an end of violence between all persons. My hunger extends beyond a mere end to harm. It extends into a practice of compassion. Compassion is defined as the sympathetic awareness of others' distress, together with the desire to alleviate it. The sympathetic response and the desire to alleviate it. The practice of compassion has a broad spectrum. There's many different ways to practice it. But on this spectrum, Unitarian Universalists historically and in contemporary practice embody their compassion by working for justice. By which I mean we feel sympathy not just for people on an individual by individual basis, but in a broad sense, and that we have a desire to alleviate that suffering by changing societal systems that cause that suffering in the first place. For instance, we've tackled vast differences in social mobility by increasing access to education, gender discrimination by advocating for women's suffrage, racial oppression by being leading abolitionists, by joining the civil rights movement, by co-founding organizations like the NAACP. We refute religious homophobia by being the first religious body to ordain openly gay and lesbian and transgender clergy. And there are other things I could list, but a list can go on. But time and again is my point, we have stood on the side of justice. Our approach in engaging compassion follows that old biblical adage, if you give a man a fish, he is hungry tomorrow. If you teach him to fish, he will feed himself. I'm getting kind of excited, and I'm only on point 1. Andrew also asked for peace of mind, to know that it would be possible to care for his parents as they age. This one I really didn't expect from a 16-year-old, and it was good to hear from a 16-year-old. What I later learned was that this was the year in which Andrew's grandmother got sick and then sicker and passed away. And Andrew, during that time, was watching his mother care for her mother in this process. I don't think that there's anything else that makes a child so aware that their parents are children as witnessing them losing their parents. Andrew knew someday he would face that moment too. Andrew, in this wish somehow, had the real and terrible and wonderful acknowledgement that we accompany each other into and out of this life. That is such an awesome responsibility and privilege. Andrew asks for that to be possible. Everything in my experience and faith tells me that we, just as we are basic and flawed, are enough for this task. We're enough. You're enough. All of us are enough, just as we are for this most ultimate of tasks and for all the other moments of our life as well. One can never be more than oneself, and oneself is all one should ever try to be. Her reading today was by the Unitarian poet, Mary Sarton. She speaks as one who yearned to be herself and to know that that was enough. Here are her words. Now I become myself. It's taken time, many years and places. I've been dissolved and shaken, worn other people's faces, run madly, as if time were there, terribly old, crying a warning. And now there is time, and time is young. Oh, in this single hour I live, all of myself, and do not move. I, the pursued, who ran madly, stand still, and stop the sun. To be oneself, to realize that one is enough, that is a yearning that could lead us to a powerful place, to the present moment, and to the impact we can make when we are still and ready and in it with every fiber of our being. And to Andrew's final wish, that people find a little more meaning in their lives. Is there anything we yearn for more than a meaning-filled life? Is there anything more sustaining than knowing what we are to do with our life? Each of the previous two yearnings were but leading to this. Suspenseful moment. I have no answers for you. The meaning of life isn't to be good so we could go to heaven. It isn't to obey divine law. It isn't to act as if there were no law, by which I mean no moral standard. While I have no answers for you, I do have the method by which we could discover the answer to that question, by which you can discover it yourself and through which we can discover it together. I hope you're pretty eager to hear this, because I don't know in any of my sermons if I'm going to give you something as big as this. Point being, come to summer services. So the method. First, you need to yearn and to pay attention to what you're yearning for. What change do you need to see in yourself or in the world for you to experience spiritual wholeness? What change do you need to see in yourself or in the world for you to experience spiritual wholeness? What gladness could you give your life to that is so deep and so rich and so sustaining that even life's great sorrows pale in comparison and no longer would feel unbearable? And where does that intersect with the great need in the world? Writer, thinker, Presbyterian minister Frederick Buechner, in his book Wishful Thinking, writes, "The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meets. The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meets." Buechner says that that intersection is where God calls you. I say that intersection is where you will find the meaning that will sustain you. So yearn. Follow your heart's deep call out into the community. Discover others who grieve and weep and yearn for change as you do, and whose hearts would sing and dance at finding that place of deep gladness. You might not yet know what you yearn for. That yearning might be loud, but it might also, for now, be still and small. But the call is undeniably there. We think we are seekers, but that's not quite right. It is we who are being asked, Each person, you, me, all of us, is questioned by life, and we could only answer to life with our lives. We have this great freedom and this great gift to choose whether or not we will respond responsibly to what we encounter in the world and to what we recognize as the yearning within us. We have a choice that we alone can make. If we want a meaningful life, we will put action behind our sentiments. We will act to change the world so it becomes a place of deep gladness. A meaningful life ultimately means accepting responsibility for finding the right answer to the problems one encounters and to fulfill the tasks that are constantly being asked of each of us. It may not be easy, but it is meaningful. And that is the blessing that I seek. May our yearning lead us into the troubled waters of life, for there we may find the call. There we may find the meaningful life. The call, the meaning, is life asking us to meet its great hunger with our deep gladness. The choice is before us. Amen.